What is going on, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the madness. And this video is one of my it's kind of one of my favorite types of videos. And what it is talking about the two best colors in the game. We're talking about amber, steel, and specifically what we're talking about is we're going to be talking about what I would run if I was to play amber steel this weekend, if I had the opportunity to, and we'll reveal that at the end, what list I would run. But we're going to talk about 4 different lists, and we're going to talk about tech options for all of them and different cards that you might want to throw in if you're more afraid of something else, and also kind of the play style that you're going to be looking at if you run with a certain list and how you might play them differently. And because they're all doing the same thing, trying to get to 20 lore, but they're all doing it very differently. And we'll talk about that. So this is kind of just a talk about the 4 more popular styles of amber steel, the list that I've had a lot of success with in testing and we've seen do really well. And yeah, just kind of talking about a lot of different things. So let me get my face out of the way here because we do have a couple things to talk about first. And bam. All right. So, what is this? This is the Safari Zone Collectibles 5K happening tomorrow in Smyrna, Delaware. You're not going to want to miss it. First off, the cap is really 150 people. That's 150 extremely comfortably. The store is huge. The store is massive. It's clean. The air conditioning is perfect. Angel just had the AC reworked, so making sure that it was going to go really well for this event. It's awesome. On top of that, she also opened 10 cases exclusively for this event on top of the 10 cases that she opened at the start of the set. So plenty of cards if you need singles. But what are we talking about for the list today? For the video, we're talking about traditional steel song, hyper aggro, Rhino hyper aggro, and Rhino diggy diggy hole. And we'll talk again, talking about tech options for all of those. And then, of course, we've got down here as well as Blurple. I should have thrown Blurple in here. It's the colors that I think we'll see the most of this weekend. And I think if I remembered Blurple, I think Blurple would probably be third. But if I was to order these in any way, shape, or form, I think we're going to see the more amber steel than anything else, followed by green steel, followed by probably Blurple, and then green, purple, red, purple. And I still don't think we'll see a lot of red blue. I don't think that's going to happen. Ruby Fossil will show up, but I don't think we're going to see a lot of it. But I think red purple has everything it needs to be able to be very competitive into aggro while still having the slower grindy package that it needs. Green purple, Mo had a really good tweet today where he talked about green purple being such a great deck, but now it has removal in the form of lever, so you just have to figure out the ratios. And then you don't know if it's going to be discard, is it going to be aggro, is it going to be tempo? It could any way you can go with that. There's even kind of the mill bounce package that you could go with now as well. And then of amber steel, tons of different lists. Green steel, most likely we'll see a lot of just discard because that's what it's known for. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some of that crazy Mickey, 10 cost Mickey coming out, or even the BOGO damage Philip kind of package. But I think that's, if you guys watch my meta breakdown at the beginning of the week, it's just the meta's wide open. I just think that we're definitely going to have some colors that outshine others as far as what is most represented. But what I'm most interested in is green steel going to have the top #1 finishes after this weekend. And because last weekend it did by a lot. So we'll see how that kind of changes. But let's talk about our first list. And the first one I have to talk about is my baby. All right. Well, the first one I have to talk about is traditional steel song. And this is where I'm currently at. And if you've been watching my notes on Dreamborn, you'll know that one thing I've played with a lot is the Singer 4s. And I've run 6 Singer 4s for a while. But I've been playing around with Naveen's and Grab Your Swords and just a lot of different things. So this is kind of where I'm at with it. But if we jump to the next slide, you'll see down here, I have the list still, but then let's talk tech options. And because these are the majority of the tech options. I could have thrown Beast in here as well. I think Beast is a good option. But first one, let's talk about the Miss Bianca, because Miss Bianca is a turn 4, typically a turn 4 5/5/1 that can sing a whole new world. And it sounds great, and it is great. Like, Bianca's a phenomenal card. She really is. But one thing that I've really enjoyed is this Namari right here. Namari has been has been really special. And she's a 052, 5 cost inkable, so she can't come down on 4 like Bianca can, but the fact that by the time you do get her down, you more than likely have a 4/5, a 5/5, if not more. And that means anything that is going to want to take out Bianca, or sorry, Namari, it's going to be traded into. And the same could be said for Bianca, but Namari also able to just straight up take out any location. But the thing that I love most about Namari is the fact that she can cycle. We'll go back again. When you play this character when you play this character and at the start of your turn, you may draw a card, then choose and discard a card. And that's really powerful because sometimes you just get stuck on cards you don't want, or where aggro is so popular right now. What's going to happen is maybe you get a whole new world or 2 whole new worlds in your hand, but then you can play that Namar and you can get rid of those whole new worlds that you might not want to cast because you don't have something like a Sonic Warrior down. So the Namari helps you get rid of those dead cards into certain matchups. And let's be honest, that happens to Steel Song sometimes. So I've really been feeling Namari, and I think that she fits in that slot very well. But I think if you're going to run one, I think you have to run one or the other, that Miss Bianca or the Namari. And for now, I'm enjoying Namari. The other one, though, is Prince Naveen. And there's a lot of people that are really, really high on him. They're running 3, they're running 4. There's some people that claim that if you run less than 3, you're just wrong in 100 different directions. And I don't agree with that necessarily. Naveen is a great card. Do not get me wrong. And he has a lot of more utility in this set than he ever has before, specifically because of Rhino. Because what happens is before we'd run the shift package that was either this Queen or this Robin Hood. And what that allowed you to do is shift and sing Whole New World on turn 3. But now with Rhino, you can't do that, but you're still running a shift package that empties your hand really quickly. So the idea now is that you have your Ariel and then you have your Prince Naveen, so they can refill your hand that way. Your Ariel will probably get brawled or taken out by an enemy song, but they can't stop the Naveen. So if you use Ariel and you find a Whole New World against something that's not green, then now what happens is you play that Naveen, you play Whole New World, and you get to refill your hand. The Rhino can sing a song. Everything is peachy keen, right? So Naveen, I definitely see the appeal. But one thing that's happened every set is my uninkables go down a little bit more and a little bit more. And before I got on this particular list, I was on 6 Singer 4s, no Naveens, and 2 Aerial Sonic Warriors. And that also felt really good. I did enjoy that. I enjoyed the consistency. That was 13 uninkables. And if you grab your swords, because I don't like that card. I've talked bad about it for a long time. I just think that it works really well right now. Then you could go down to 12 uninkables. And in Steel Song, that's a low amount. You're gonna be hard. You can alter pretty heavy with something like that. So I think that could work as well. But Naveen, just feeling good. It feels good into aggro because you can aerial into grab your sword. They sing Strength of a Raging Fire on your aerial. Prince Naveen is in your hand because you're super lucky. And then you play Naveen, grab your sword, and the game is over at that point. So that's an option as well. And then, of course, the Ursula. If you want to go up in Singer 4s, I liked 2 of them, and 6 felt really consistent and really, really good. The bare necessities here is if you want to run bare necessities plus World's Greatest Criminal Mind, so you go 1 and 1, or some people are just on 2 and 0. And bare necessities just has more utility overall. And that's really the key here is you're going to be seeing a lot of amber steel this weekend and a lot of green steel this weekend. And then on top of that, bare necessities is an extra Pete against red purple, which I also think is going to be really popular this weekend. So you wouldn't be wrong to run World's Greatest Criminal Mind or bare necessities. The thing you're looking at here is, are you more worried about something like a Shift Pete, or are you more worried about these other plethora of songs, whether it be Zeus, Let the Storm Rage On, Beyond the Horizon? Against Red Blue, you could do it on a bunch, most of their deck. So there is a lot of utility, and it really comes down to, if you see it, what is the likelihood of that card, beats you, right? And then in this case, you're mostly worried about Shift Pete. Of course, there's Monstro in Blurple. There's Bianca, Namari, things like that. If you run the Queen package, you could use Queen plus World's Greatest Criminal Mind. So there are a lot of targets, just not as many targets as bare necessities. So something to think about. You're not wrong either way. It really comes down to what would you be more upset with losing to, some kind of like that, or what do you expect to see more of? If you don't expect a lot of green steel and you think you're fine into that matchup, then you don't have to run, World's Greatest Criminal Mind. You can run bare necessities, which is also good into green steel. So they both feel fine. They really do. Uh, Ultimately, a lot of the time I ink World's Greatest Criminal Mind versus and Bare Necessities anyways, because unless I have a really good hand and I can force that Rapunzel lock or I can force that whole new world early, it's more of something that you typically, in my opinion, you want to see later on. But yeah, hand knowledge is also really good. And then of course, we'll talk about grab your swords. We kind of mentioned it earlier. I like it right now. I think it feels good. Will it feel good in a week or two? We'll see. But right now, it's felt good, especially with something like the red purple running Medusas. They deal 2 damage to their Queen of Hearts, and if they do that, then maybe you can grab your swords to take it out. Grab your swords is great against Chernodogs for the most part. If they're running hyper aggro, it's good into that matchup. It is a little bit weaker into the Diggy Diggy Hole variant because you're really only looking at things like the lady or the piglet, but it still does good into that matchup if they don't have, a bunch of 1/3s and 4/3s and things like that. Finally, though, the shift package. The shift package has been interesting. And, I tested Robinhood, and if I was to run a 3 cost, if I was to run a shift 3, I'd run Mickey Mouse. I've been running Mickey Mouse in my lantern build, and I've really, really liked that. So I can almost guarantee my whole new world against anything that's not green. And I've really liked Mickey Mouse. So if I was to run a shift 3, it would always be Mickey Mouse at this point. Robin Hood there's just too much Let the Storm Rage on to just bust that up. It's just so difficult to get that Robin Hood down. If you do, it still feels great. It's great Rapunzel value. It lets you trade into aggro. It still feels phenomenal, but it's hard to lose the utility of Rhino to play Robin Hood. I don't think, again, you're not wrong to play Robin Hood. It's still a great card. It really comes down to, do you care about the ability to get your shift down often? If you do get it down, you're in a really good spot against most decks because it's still 3/6. It draws you card, all the fun stuff. The other one, though, is the Queen. I really like the idea of Queen. Queen has worked well in testing. I know a lot of people are really on Rhino, so I've been pushing testing with Rhino a lot more. But I'll admit, something in my gut just feels. I get a funny feeling when I'm playing Rhino. I do. I get a funny feeling when I'm playing Rhino in traditional, because traditional, you need all those songs, right? You don't need them, but Whole New World is such a big part of traditional, and Queen allows you to advance in lore, right? You quest with the Queen, and then you can give your Troubadour +4 strength, so you can trade into things. Most things trade and get banished as well if they trade into Queen. With that being said, if you were to run this list and you haven't ran Queen before, this is not the weekend to test it for the first time. Queen is it's a very difficult shift to run. It takes a lot of finesse to run the Queen, but she still has amazing turn 2s where you could sing a whole new world if it looks right to do that. But also her ability to just let anything turn into a brick house and trade into something is really good. She still can sing Zeus and let the Storm Rage on turn 2. So it's not bad. It's a fine option. A lot of people, again, they think if you run Queen, you're 100% wrong and you don't know how to play a traditional steel song, and that's fine and dandy. But like I said, something about Rhino, it feels weird. It hasn't felt bad playing him, but him not being able to sing a whole new world, it's rough. It's really rough. It's really rough. But this is the list I would run though if I was to play traditional Steel Song this weekend. So next up on the list, we do have the hyper aggro variant, and not much has changed about this list overall. This is my hyper aggro variant that I first tweeted at the very beginning of the set, and not much has changed. A couple things that have changed. Again, if you follow my Dreamborn, I have notes on there. Also, the free Metafy guide where I type notes on there. But one thing that's changed is I've added Mulans and I've added more one drops. And the reason I've done this, so we're at 4, 8, 12, we're at 13 one drops. The reason I've gone up to 13, just that one more than normal, is that I really don't want to be having a big altar, okay? Like, and what happens is if I have the Mulan, I still like the Happy because it answers green purple really well. It answers Diablo so well. It forces green steel to have Let the Storm Rage on. I still like Happy even without mine. Mulan though just she lets me keep altars that I might not normally keep, or go really heavy for altars I might not go heavy for, while being able to filter through my hand. So what I'm able to do when I have something like Mulan is I can keep hands that might not be the best, but I have the ability to dig a little bit deeper at some point. And you can go either way with her. But this deck is also pretty high on inkables as well, which we're on 4, 8, 12, 14, 18 on inkables, which is not bad for hyper aggro. You're not getting to high ink anyways. But this is kind of where I'm at right now. And you'll notice the 2 Vinnies as well. But if we go to the next page, let's talk about some of these tech options. And the first one being the Vinny. I think that Prince is phenomenal. I think Prince is an absolute game breaker in the list because there are lines that if you get them, you just cannot lose. You just can't. If you go something like Daisy and then you can go Daisy into Piglet into Lady plus Prince and Bodyguard. Like it's incredibly difficult for you to lose the game at that point. That's an amazing line. If you go Prince again after that plus Daisy, like then they have to deal with 205 with Bodyguard, which is difficult. It's really hard. But Vinny has been doing really well. And the thing about Vinny and why I'm bringing Vinny in is I talked about this really early, and I talk about this in the guide, and I talked about it earlier in another video on this deck, is that I just didn't feel like Vinny was the time yet because red wasn't super popular, and the deck could go fast enough because people don't tech for aggro early on. They want to try some of these more greedy things and see what happens. So we didn't need Vinny, but now people are teching for aggro. So what happens now is you can do something like Daisy into Lilo into Vinny, right? And what happens is when you do that, when they clear your Daisy, when they clear your Lilo, you get that lore anyways. And then at this point, you can start bringing back your Lilos. And now they have to clear your Lilos, but also you're gaining 1 lore at a time if they haven't removed your Vinny. So your Vinny is just kind of sitting there. And it's a card they have to answer. So now they have to figure out, how do I answer this card? How do I answer the stuff on board? And it's kind of like a diggy hole. It's kind of like mine. If you run mine, they have to worry about, how do I answer this mine? But how do I answer all these characters as well? They keep getting this 1 lore every turn, and I really hate it. And Vinny's kind of doing the same thing. The nice thing about Vinny, though, is if you have, 4 characters down and they play B prep, what happens, you gain 1 lore for each of those characters. Not Vinny, because Vinny is whenever one of your characters is banished, whenever one of your other characters is banished, gain 1 lore. So he does not gain 1 lore for himself. But a B prep, if it clears Pluto, Sven, Penny, you gain 3 lore. So now they have to figure out, is that worth it? Do I have a way to remove Vinny first and then remove these? And then finally, Vinny's Rapunzel value. He's a 1/4. So if you need it, you can use him to get Rapunzel value. And because he's already gained you some lore, he's done his job. Now let's abuse him to get Rapunzel value. I get a 1/5/2 down, and I draw 1 or 2 cards, even maybe 3. That feels really good. So if you wanted to run like a 3/3 package with Vinny, you could do that. You could even run 4 Princes and 4 Vinnies if you really wanted to. At that point, your uninkables, you're on 20. that is gonna get a little rough. That I gotta be honest, that's pretty rough even for hyper aggro, but it's something you could do. But I think if you really wanted, if you really enjoyed Vinny, you could just go 3 Prince, 3 Vinny, and that way you have a high likelihood of seeing either one, and then both kind of doing the same thing. The other one is Pluto. Shout out to my buddy Safari. I won't say his name because he is playing in the tournament tomorrow, but he's a really big fan of Pluto, and I understand why. Personally, I just think Prince is a better Pluto. Prince offers you the utility of being able to play him early. Yes, he's not uninkable, and yes, he's not a 5/5, but Pluto, he is a 5/5 until he takes any damage. So if they play mine, they pop, they move Rhino to mine, pop Pluto, and then send Rhino into Pluto and clear him without any issues, anyways. And again, Diggy Diggy Hole is going to be a popular deck this weekend. So I just think when you're running, Plutos and Rapunzels and the 3-cost Vinnies and the 3-cost Pete's, you're just getting a lot of high cost, cards that I just don't know if you need in a hyper aggro list. But, to each their own, right? To some people really like the idea of Pluto over Prince. It's an inkable and it's a 5/5. So I don't think you're wrong. I think the line is cleaner with Prince. That's just kind of how I feel about that. But next up we have Sven. And Sven, if I was to run Sven, I would cut the Rapunzels. And I have cut the Rapunzels testing the Sven, and it felt great. It felt really, really, really good. It felt phenomenal. And just trying to get the point across. The nice thing about Sven in a heavy purple meta is that even against Steel Song, if they run out of songs, all they have left is to challenge, right? With their Namares, their Biancas, their Lawrences, their Smees. All they have left to do is challenge. But if you play a Smee and ready that Piglet or ready that Prince or ready something, then now all they can do is find a song. That's their only answer to the Sven that quests for 2 and the other card that quests for 1 or 2. And that's amazing. Like it really is. That is absolutely amazing. And to be honest, with hyper aggro, a lot of the time you don't get the Rapunzel value anyways, unless you have the Rapunzel's tower down. Your characters, they don't survive long enough. They don't have enough health. Your only good Rapunzel value is really going to be Smee taking 1 damage, the Prince if you set that up, maybe Vinny. Other than that, and Daisy makes for good Rapunzel value as well. But if you're setting up that Rapunzel value, that means you're not questing and you're a hyper aggro deck. You're trying to win by turn 5, turn 6. And the more lore you lose by setting up these Rapunzel traps, that could be what you lose by, even if you get to draw 1, 2, 3 cards with Rapunzel. So instead you run the Spins and you kind of delete that from having to be a possibility or a need. You don't need to draw another card if you're readying one of your characters anyways. So Spin has felt really good in testing. I've really, really enjoyed Spin overall. So again, I would run that over Rapunzel. The next up is Penny. Again, I have Penny in this list, so never mind. Well, ignore that. But finally, we have Smash and Fire the Cannons. And this, if I was to run hyper aggro this weekend, I would run Smash and Fire the Cannons over the Cindy and the Let the Storm Rage on and the Strength. So I would add in Nala. I would probably add in Nala instead of Cindy, Fire the Cannons instead of Let the Storm Rage on, and Smash over the Strength of a Raging Fire. And the reason I would do this is because Fire the Cannons, and you could keep Strength of a Raging Fire if you really wanted to, and I don't think you'd be wrong to do that either if you wanted to keep Strength over Smash, but Fire the Cannons just destroys some decks' ability to even have a chance to take you out, because you can use Fire the Cannons if you're on the play. Even if you're on the draw, you can use Fire the Cannons to take out their shift targets, and then it's gone. On the play, yes, if you have Cindy plus Let the Storm Rage on, you could do that. But on the draw, you can't. So if they play Baby Rhino, and then you just take it out with the Fire the Cannons, they lose that opportunity. And that's big, and that's massive. If you take out the Baby Diablo, they lose that opportunity. So Fire the Cannons just does a lot. It answers a fox in a lot of different places. And then Smash, answering, Ursula 3, answering the aerial, answering the Peter Pan shift, which is a not shift, but the Peter Pan rush, which is also a really deadly card for this deck. But overall, I love this list. I think this list is a lot of fun. It is you know, it's a very difficult list in my opinion. A lot of people think aggro is extremely simple, but if you ink turn one, if you ink and play the wrong card, you might just lose the game right there because you need that lore. And I was watching a player today. He was live streaming. I watched one game and he played the wrong card on turn 2, and then he lost by the amount of lore he would have gotten from that card if he had played it and quested instead of playing a different card. And that's what happens with aggro. Is aggro, you will lose or win by that turn 6, turn 7, and it's a difficult deck, and that altar is so incredibly important. That turn 1, that turn 2. So again, be patient, okay? Be patient. Next up, though, we do have this Rhino hyper aggro. And I feel the need to talk about this list because, again, Rhino is a very good card. When you have this Rhino, what happens is that you have the ability to fight more on the draw. And that's what this is about. So we've removed the Rapunzel's Tower. We've added in this Rhino, and we took out the Happies. You're looking for a deck that does a little bit better on the draw. And that's what this is. Rhino is just a really good on the draw card, and that's what you're doing when you run this. Now, remember, just because you have Rhino doesn't mean you have to slam down Rhino, because if you go Rhino on 1, Rhino on turn 2, you only quest for 2, right? But if I go Daisy on 1 and Lilo on 2, on turn 3, I'm questing for 4 versus you only questing for 2. And that is a big difference, right? So keep that in mind. But that's really the only difference here. For options, you could swap the Mulan for Happy. Again, we talked about that, being able to answer the evasive characters really well, which is really positive. You could even, Happy plus the Storm Rage on answers the Genie, answers the Peter Pan and Rush. So that is an option. Of course, the pennies for the Lilos. The reason Lilos are in these decks is, again, because I expect more red purple, and Lilo is just able to come back and be really annoying. And if you get a Vinny down and a Lilo, that's a constant supply of lore that they now have to worry about. So something to consider. And again, the Plutos, if you wanted to run Pluto, I would probably cut Prince. That would be the route I would go if I was to run the Pluto, if I really wanted the safety net of that inkable bodyguard on turn 4. But yeah, that's why I would run this list. I would run this list if you wanted slightly better odds on the draw. And that's really what it comes down to. The only reason I only say slightly is because when this list is so fast, the hyper aggro list, sometimes it doesn't matter, because if you go Daisy, Piglet into, again, Lady, Prince on the draw, that's still a metric ton of lore that you're representing there. So finally, the list here is the Diggy Hole list that Kurt ran this past weekend. There was one difference between our two lists that we had posted. I had 4 Daisy Ducks. He had 4 Calhouns. I decided to post his list because I think it's really good into a meta if you think there's going to be a lot of Amber Steel, and that's what it comes down to. And that's why you run 4 Calhouns, is because the 4 Calhouns answers those aggro decks so well. Okay, now if you do believe that you're going to be running into a lot of red purple and things like that, maybe Calhoun's not the move, but Calhoun still trades well into the Medusa, into the Queen of Hearts, into their 1-drops, things like that. So it is kind of mind games when you play Calhoun. They get afraid to challenge stuff or turn sideways in quest because they don't want you to gain 2 lore. So that is something, a benefit of it. But you could easily run 4 Daisy Ducks and then run more Inkables, or that Calhoun could also be Vinny. With that being said, I don't think Vinny works well in this list, and I also want to run Prince. So I think if you run a Diggy Hole variant, I think Calhoun or one of these 2 drops, specifically the Lilo. I think the Lilo would be a great way to go. And this is a shout out to Decandio, because, Decandio, the one that made Diggy Hole what it is, Lilo just comes in, and when I suspect a lot of red purple, Lilo can come in. You can ping things for 1 damage when you bring her in with it if you have a mine down. But also if they B prep you, you not only have the mines down, you also have Lilo now. So if they B prep and you've played 2 Lilos or you discarded them with Doc, like you bring those back or you bring back the 1 Lilo and then you also top deck a card. So now Tremaine isn't as effective, things like that. So just opportunity. So if I was to cut the Calhouns, I would probably go to 4 Daisies and 3 Lilos. But you could also just do something like 2 Calhouns, 2 Lilos, and I think that would be fine. Again, if you're walking around early, get to the event early, okay? Especially if it's a smaller event. If you're going to a smaller event this weekend, get there early, walk around. People love to play test against their friends. They love to look, they're building their deck list beforehand and, or they're building their deck list there. So their whole deck is laid out. It's take the advantage, right? There's no reason not to. With that being said, have your deck list done before you get to the store. If you're debating running 4 decks, have all 4 deck lists done and quit changing your list. Just debate what deck you want to run, okay? That's something, or just have multiple lists ready for what you're thinking about changing. Like just be ready. Do not be building your deck list at the event where everyone can see what you're playing, okay? But Diggy Hole feels really good. Okay. It feels great. It feels phenomenal. The ability to bounce things between the mine and deal all that damage, the Rhino for the control, the Calhoun for the control. This deck, it is slower. It is a slower deck, but you can still go fast. If you go, again, Daisy, Piglet into Lady plus Smee, or, a better line would be something like Daisy, Smee, Lady into Piglet. So then your Smee isn't taking damage. Just tons of really good lines. So these are my tech options that I would run into it. Yeah, huge. Yeah, I don't know. I think you could run any of these lists and you'd be perfectly fine. Ultimately, you'd be perfectly fine. Now, what would I run this weekend? It's so difficult because traditional Steel Song is my safe place, right? It's really good. It feels strong. It feels positive. I know it like the back of my hand. And it has a good matchup into everything. It's still, pretty 50-50 into red blue because you can't go fast. So if they abuse their whole hand and you don't quite get up there as much lore, but it's still more winnable than it's ever been. Hyper aggro doesn't have a lot of weaknesses when you can go so fast. I think this weekend, if I was to be able to play an event, I would take Diggy Hole, the Hyper Aggro with Fire the Cannons, and Traditional. I would take those 3 lists, and then I would kind of walk around and see what's up. And ultimately, I would probably play the Diggy Hole variant, I think. And the reason for this is simply because the Diggy Hole variant has a really good matchup into everything. And it just feels strong right now. It's it's extremely fast. The mines do a lot of work. I don't know. I talked about what I would play this weekend, and I'm not one of those players that can make that decision and then be happy with it. So I'll change my mind 9 times. I can make a perfectly good argument to run any of them. I really could. Traditional has felt great. That's probably my highest win rate. Aggro, though, is so much fun. Diggy Hole is so much fun. Let's be honest. I would probably run traditional. If 5 minutes before the event I still hadn't chosen, I would probably run traditional overall. I think it is the safest route overall, and the safest route for me because I know it so well. But this Diggy Hole has felt phenomenal. But if you've never played it, now is not the time. Now is not the time to play it because a lot of people think that you need to slam characters down. And I'm gonna do a different video. I have gameplay for mines. But this video was requested more than the gameplay video with mines. But there's a lot of plays that people think might be underpowered, like, going Daisy on 1 into mines on 2 when you have a Piglet in hand. Like, why would you do that? Well, the reason is because mines just offers so much utility. And if you have that mines, that's a lot of opportunity there because now you're starting to build that lore while you can potentially trade across the board if you're against another, Amber Steel deck. And next thing you know, you gain 6 lore from just the mine while you're trading and controlling the board. The hyper aggro with Vinny or the I would run this hyper aggro with no Rhino before I ran the other one, but I would run the fire cannon smash if I was to run it. And I think that ultimately I would run Spins over Rapunzels. I really do. And so if I was to run this list, the things I would be worried about with this list, probably a red purple that is super teched for aggro. And when I say super teched, I'm talking one drops, Queen of Hearts, the new Medusa that pings one of their characters and bounces one of yours, and crabs and foxes. So if they're super heavy teched for aggro, then that would be my big worry with this deck. But I think that's also one of the biggest weaknesses of this deck. And like that's a big part. Traditional, they have to see very specific cards. If they do not see the songs they need, they're not going to make it. Rhino can help, but if you go Lady Prince, then they're not going to be able to stop their Piglet and things like that. So, and then you have Rapunzel's Tower to help you get there as well. And then if you blow up their Cindy, then that kind of just stops them dead in their tracks also. So you don't play a turn one, but you blow up their Cindy, and then turn two, you play something like Piglet or you play Penny, Lilo. Like they all feel fine. Or maybe you drop two Daisies. That feels fine. Or you could even drop Prince, and then next turn you drop Lady and Piglet. But I would probably drop Piglet, right? If turn one on yeah, I'm getting off subject. This would feel fine. I would run the Smash Fire Cannon Spin in this list, and I would be very happy. I think you have a great matchup into literally anything, and I think that you would do phenomenal. I really do. And then of course traditional. Traditional is my baby. I would be crazy to not run traditional. I would be, and this is probably what I'd end up running. Let's be honest, because the deck just it's good into everything. It really is. Even its biggest weakness is red blue, which isn't as popular anymore. It has a good matchup into red purple, and it just does well. That's really all it comes down to. The deck does phenomenal, and you have to watch out for sneaky things like green. Of course, green with their 2-drop Ursulas can make things rather difficult, but as long as you just kind of get rid of your songs and keep mostly characters, that 2-drop Ursula is not going to be as effective. So overall, 4 different lists. All right, 4 different lists that you could run. I'd probably end up with traditional Steel Song, but knowing me, I would take 3 decks with me. I would take this one with these 3 cards here. I would take the Diggy Hole variant, and I would take traditional. And then I would kind of just see how things go. Maybe you could run 2 or 3 games tonight of each one and see how they all feel. That would be my recommendation. And what do you get the most wins with, and what you're going to have the most, maybe what you get the most wins with, but also you feel the most confident in because you got those wins, would be a great way to go as well. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you wanted this kind of video in a slightly different way next time, let me know. I know I did some rambling, but there's a lot to talk about for decks that are very similar, but just different reasons to run them. But overall, I hope you guys enjoyed it. And as always, remember, stay happy and healthy, okay? That's all that matters. I'll see you guys around.